Hello and welcome to another edition of Monuments. I'm Rashid Best. Thanks for joining us. It is regarded as a statue, building, or structure meant to commemorate or celebrate a notable person or event. This episode will feature the iconic Morgan Lewis Windmill, situated here in St. Andrew. Rich in history and heritage, the preservation of this windmill serves to educate our people about our past, and it also serves as a revenue earner, especially as it relates to heritage tourism. We begin the program with historian Dr. Henderson Carter, who speaks of this historic site.
Welcome to the Morgan Lewis Windmill, the only windmill in Barbados with its arms, with its tail tree, with its machinery intact. One of a kind. One of a kind. And I emphasize the only because in 1848 we had 506 windmills in Barbados. 506. And this is the only one left intact. And this is, in my view, a significant heritage asset, an asset that, tells us about the story of sugar, the story of slavery, and the story of those enslaved Africans who lived here way back after James Drats and hauled it from Locust Hall, and Constant Sylvester from Constant got into sugar in a big way around the 1630s, right up to 1838. And this mill is situated on the Morgan Lewis plantation, named after an Englishman, Morgan Lewis, who owned this plantation, acquired it around 1674. He just had about 80 acres. But later on, the plantation developed. It was acquired by other families, such as the Gibbons family, the Pyle family, the Bannister family, and it grew into a big plantation, what I would call a fairly large plantation. For example, in 1787, we had over 378 acres here at Morgan Lewis. This was not only a sugar plantation, even though we have a sugar mill, but it was also a plantation in which cattle ranching was a big thing, a massive thing. So that when you look at the slave list for 1817, you see, for example, there are cattle keepers. You see, for example, there are grass pickers. There are stock keepers, and they total about 46 individuals allotted to that activity. And that activity was vital because you're producing milk for not only the plantation, but you're producing milk for other plantations and possibly Bridgetown. And you're also producing meat for other plantations and Bridgetown. So that a good percentage of the enslaved blacks, that percentage was divided between the stock keepers and the sugar cane persons working in the sugar cane industry. For example, so you have 46 people who are devoted into cattle ranching, and another 73 into plantation agriculture. They are field individuals. So this is a significant plantation. Over 370 acres. In 1817, the population here, the enslaved population, was 144. 144. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the enslaved population. And this mill, one of the things I discovered looking at the slave list for 1817 was that there were individuals who got their name from this mill. So that, for example, you have a man called Mill Grigg, Grig. You have Betty Mill, Hannah Mill, Ashley Mill. Now that indicates to me that these persons might have been working at this mill or in this mill, okay, and not necessarily in the field. And they got their names because of their occupation. For example, you will find names like Johnny the Carpenter, another slave list, or Dick the Mason. And it really shows that those persons were attached to their occupations, and they got their names from their occupations. And that is interesting. And we have also information, again from the 1817 slave list, which tells us a little bit about the percentage of African and Creole or Barbadian. In 1817 Sherwood, we only had one African on this plantation. That's an African named Joe. Only one African. All the others are listed as Barbadian. And the oldest person was about 68. There's an old Abraham who's 63. There's a young Abraham, perhaps his son or grandson, who's 26. There's an old Jane. There's an old Johnny. And it goes back to the issue of naming. People are named because of their ages as well. And I suspect that, yes, you might have been called Johnny in the early stages, but when you get old, the planter just put old Johnny in the list. And that is significant. And a lot of these enslaved Africans who were old were listed as superannuated, meaning that these people had basically retired, people who did not really work. The planters might have considered them a liability on the plantation. But they did work. They made this plantation a very successful plantation. And this plantation, over 370 acres, was essential to the productivity of Barbados, and it made a contribution to English capitalism or British capitalism. Here you have canes being processed in this mill. That processing is interesting. Now, when the canes were crushed, that juice moved down through gutters into the boiling house on my left. And you can see the chimney there of the boiling house. So you have the crushed canes moving down, the juice moving down into the boiling house. And the sugar cane is boiled in about 4 cauldrons. You start with the largest, and they graduated until you get to the smallest and the hottest. And when that sugar cane was boiled, when the boiler man said, yes, this is ready to be cured, it was taken out, placed into clay pots. And I want to emphasize the importance of clay, especially in this area which we call the Scotland district. Lots of clay in this area. This clay was used very creatively by the planters. The planters on these Barbadian plantations produce 2 types of sugar. One called Muscovado sugar, where the sugar is placed into clay pots, and the clay pots are plugged and unplugged. After a week or so, you would unplug, the molasses would come out, that would be taken into the rum house or the still house, and the sugar knocked out, placed into hogsheads or barrels, and exported to England. And the English wanted this muscovado because it could be further refined and they could do a lot with it, because the refining business in England was big business. But the second type of sugar was clayed sugar, where they would have a mixture of clay, found probably in the Chalky Mount area. Mixture of clay and water. You pour in that mixture into the clay pots with the sugar in there and allow it to cure, sometimes over a month. So it's a longer curing process. So therefore you have three things happening. More molasses dripping out of it to make more rum. But secondly, you have a lighter sugar, which paid a lower freight rate when it was shipped to England. And thirdly, that sugar, that clayed sugar, which was called semi-white, got a higher price. It fetched a higher price when it got to England. And the planters were able to make their profits here in Barbados. And that's why Barbados became so important as a sugar colony. Because it was not just producing muscovado sugar, it was producing clayed sugar. And the planters in Antigua followed suit. Because there's a lot of clay in Antigua, they followed suit to produce clayed sugar. But what really made the difference between a big profit and a small one was the export of molasses and the production of rum. They didn't call it rum, but in those days they call it kill devil or rum bullion. One writer calls it a hottish hellish liquor that lays them asleep. So that in 1631, when Sir Henry Court came here, he found these individuals, these Englishmen, making that spirit. So that's why Barbados is the home for rum. Okay? And normally on these plantations, you would have the rum house or the distillery placed close to the boiling house. Okay? And that molasses and sometimes cane juice as well. They use either molasses or cane juice, but the key here was to use your molasses, not the cane juice, because you want that cane juice to make sugar. Okay, so you use that molasses, you ferment it, put some molasses with water into a large fermentation vat, leave the vat in the open for 7 to 8 days. At that stage, it turns bubbly, it has a pungent odor, and it is ready. That's the first stage of the rum process, ready to be put into these pot stills. The stills are heated, and then you have evaporation and condensation, and then you have your low wines. You put that back into the still, and then you have your high wines. So you could increase your alcohol by double distilling it, okay? And the Jamaicans were very good at this, double distilling their rum. And what happened was that you produce two types of rums. Here on these Barbadian plantations, and even though I don't have evidence, I haven't seen the ledgers for this plantation. There's evidence for Newton and Turner's Hall and Codrington that suggests that two rums are produced. You have a new rum, and it's called new rum, okay, which is basically straight from the still. It is not aged. And then you have an old rum, and you see in the plantation ledgers this old rum, which is sold in the towns. And the towns here in Barbados, Oistins, Bridgetown, Spice Towns, these were the places where the taverns were located. So you sell that rum in the taverns. But most of it was sold to the North American traders, what we call the traders or the captains from the 13 continental colonies, New York and Massachusetts and New Jersey and Philadelphia, etc. Okay? Those what we call sister colonies traded with Barbados. So we sent rum some molasses, a little bit of sugar, and they sent to us all the food that the enslaved people and the planters needed. Rice, peas, salt fish or codfish, pork, what have you. Even bread. I've seen a list where bread comes from Philadelphia. Probably stale by the time it gets here. And that trend still continues, in that we import a lot from Miami, from America, and that trend, that trend only ceased temporarily in the 1780s when there was the American Revolution. Lots of enslaved people starved on these plantations, and that is why in 1787 they introduced the breadfruit. Okay, to stop that starvation. Stop that starvation that occurred because of the secession, the temporary secession of trade between Barbados and the rebellious colonies. Okay, so what we are saying, therefore, is that this sugar mill was the central feature of the production process on this plantation.
We thank Dr. Carter for that informative history lesson. The mandate of the Barbados National Trust is to preserve and protect the natural and built heritage of Barbados. Founded in 1961, the Trust has been doing excellent work in this regard with limited resources. Dr. John Webster of the National Trust is appealing to Barbadians to donate to the restoration efforts of this iconic windmill.
When the mill was originally bequeathed or donated to the National Trust, there was quite a lot of work that had to be done on it. It had to be literally totally restored. And my uncle Colin Webster was one of the chief people pushing this. But there were many other people who were very actively engaged. And they brought in millwrights from the UK to literally rebuild all the crucial parts, wood parts of the mill. Not many of the external wood parts of the mill would have been from 300 years or whatever ago. But they came, they measured, and they built a lot of the components in the UK and shipped them into Barbados. So there was quite an effort in getting the mill back to an operational state by British millwrights. Unfortunately, the key person that has since passed, but we still have some people here who are quite experienced and have learned a lot from the British millwrights. Right now we do have a problem. The problem is that 2 years ago we had Hurricane Elsa, which did significant damage to the external wooden parts of the mill. And the tail tree has also succumbed to age, where the tail tree needs to be replaced. There's work to be done on the arms, the points, and the lattice part on which the sails have to be put were literally stripped apart by Hurricane Elsa. An estimate has been done on what it's going to cost to restore the mill to operational capability, and that's somewhere around $160,000. The trust does not have these funds. So we're seriously looking for sponsors, donors, who can come up with funds to help us to put this back into working order. And my appeal is, can we get corporate sponsorship or anyone who's interested to make donations so we can reach our target of $160,000 to restore the Morgan Lewis Mill to working order.
The Barbados National Trust welcomes your donations. Barbadians and visitors alike will be pleased to learn of efforts to relaunch this site as a premium heritage tourism destination with an emphasis on the education of visitors.
But having reopened our gates to the public, we're looking to really relaunch it so that we get persons, both visitors and locals alike, just coming through to see the mill, see the rich history and heritage that we have here. And some of the things that we've done is to really refurbish the cafe a little bit so we could offer some meals. We really wanted to have some authentic local fare so that the public could have, because what we found is people were coming through and wanted to stay a little while, you know, have a cold or hot beverage, but be able to stay and spend some time, because beside of the mill, we just have such fantastic view here, the breeze and everything. It's very, very welcoming. And so to enhance that, we have gotten like local souvenirs and so forth. We found that there is a desire now, especially among visitors, to have authentic Barbadian experiences. People are becoming a lot more interested in history and heritage. You know, it's not this boring, stuffy thing. Oh, it's, you know, we study history in school. History can be very, very exciting. Understanding where we came from, how we got here, the process and everything that was involved in that. And so that's what we want to share at the mill. We've had a demand for it, a desire for it, and we're trying to create that here. We have souvenirs from some local artisans who, you know, handmade stuff. We have some Barbadian sugar and molasses packaged so that people can take away very easily in small amounts, because hearing the story of how the sugar was made, hearing the value, the nutritional value of molasses and the things that it could be used for, we had people asking, well, can we get some of that, you know? So we package that and we have it here on site so that our visitors are able to have that as a little souvenir takeaway of their experience here in Barbados, because that's, you know, that is Barbados at its roots, you know, sugar cane, molasses, rum, those kind of things. And so we really wanted to include a wide experience, a variety of products and so on from Barbados. And on site, we're also looking to do things with we're going to plant our own herb garden, so that's coming. But we know that one of the byproducts of the sugarcane is bagasse, and we aren't there yet, but we are looking at, we do have some small takeaway containers where we do use that, because now that people are into sustainability, we try to teach that as well. So we have the history of the things bagasse was used for, but we also have the modern things, you know, paper printing, food service containers and so on. So where we can incorporate those things and teach people a little bit about both the past and the present use of this cultural heritage of ours, because sugarcane is our heritage, and how that is being used. Even our centerpieces right now, as opposed to, you know, flowers are great, they're pretty and so on, but we have little sugarcane shoots so that people can get up close and personal with that. We've even planted a little area to the corner beside the tail tree that you heard about, and that will be able to show visitors what sugarcane looks like. They can get a close view of that. And so, yeah, we're just looking to have that full experience here so people can understand where it came from, what it was used for, how it affected life and the peoples of Barbados during the time. So from the inception to where we're taking it today, and how it's being used in our cuisine, and how it's being used in our culture as well. So in addition to all of the other things that we have available here, we really wanted to tap into that rich history. So we're also using the oak barrels from the rum making process in the furniture that we have here on display, that we're utilizing in the things that we do. And so we have Barrel Decor has been so good, you know, they're making some fantastic pieces out of that. We're going to expand our repertoire as well, but we do have some pieces here right now using that those oak barrels and so forth. And we are going to also be using those barrel cabinets to display some of our locally made Barbadian rum, because we want the world to see some of the best that we have and be able to grab and go, you know, to take away. We're definitely going to have it in the cocktails that are made here, but we will have small bottles available for visitors to be able to take away that part of Barbados with them as well. One of the experiences that we're creating here is that we're going to be pairing a full taste of Barbados along with the mill tour, so that people are able to tour the mill, and then you come and you're able to sit and have a taste of various small bites of Barbadian cuisine, from fish cakes and bakes right through to our macaroni pie and rice and peas and so on. But then we end it all with a taste of our, you know, sugar cakes and nut cakes and tamarind balls, even baked nuts you're gonna have. You know, we have the pone, and sometimes we're gonna change that up, and we'll have sweet bread and any other of those sweets that are in season or available, some local fruits and so on. But definitely even now we already have a locally made brand that provides us with our the sugar cakes, nut cakes, and tamarind balls that people are able to buy and take with them as well. So you're getting that full Barbadian experience from the beginning to the end, our natural heritage and culture, along with our cuisine heritage as well. So, and they get to hear, we tell the story of these products. Dr. Carter mentioned the breadfruit and so on. All of that is going to be part of it. They're going to get to see a breadfruit, hear where it came from, taste it, taste our pudding themselves, all of the things that make our culture the rich kind of experience that it is, and let our visitors go away. And I always tell Barbadians, don't just let the tourists come and enjoy all of these things. We have to enjoy it too. So we've done it in such a way that it's very welcoming for everyone. We want people to be able to come and just have that experience and be happy to have been here. It's a very comfortable and warm place, and we invite everyone to come down and see what we have to offer.
And of course, as we reflect on the importance of this site, we hear from previous visitors who tell us of their experiences.
Well, this is a site that connects me to my parents. This is something that my mother and father would have seen for most of their lives. And it's something that I'm saying now for the first time, because the last windmill, I'm told, stopped working in Barbados the year that I was born, which was 1946. So I've never seen a windmill in Barbados working except this one. So this connects me to my parents and to my grandparents, in whose daily life this would be a regular feature. So it's really great to be here.
I was really very glad to get the opportunity to come here today to see a part of Barbadian history being brought to life, even if it was only for a few hours. And in fact, as I saw the sails turn, I was really very, very struck with the sense of history that was conveyed, because this would have been a common sight on the landscape many years ago. And it was really very exciting to get a chance to come out and see what was going on. And I think it's very important for us to have events like this, because they certainly reflect and underscore our heritage. And it's a very important to preserve our heritage because it builds a sense of community, it underlines, engenders rather, a sense of dignity and pride in our development as a nation. And I think it's very, very important to have things like this taking place and people coming out and seeing what's going on, so we can get a sense of the importance of ourselves as people and what these things are as part of our history. So I was really very glad to get a chance to come and see what was going on. Yes, I did partake in the cane juice, and I have to say, it's really quite delicious, which is interesting because as a young boy, I really didn't like it that much. But certainly having the purest form of it here really was very exciting and very interesting. And I enjoyed it quite a lot. In fact, I have a bottle now to take home to ensure that the rest of the family enjoys it as well.
In Europe, there are loads of windmills surviving, but in the Western Hemisphere, this is the only one. And it's a remarkable job of reconstruction. We were here when it first got going again, and one needs to thank Mr. Goddard for allowing us to be at this place again to see the sails swirling. It's when you think about it, there are 506, I think it is, Carl, windmills that were on this island, and now there's one, and it's very important for a world heritage site as it is that this is operating like this. That heritage is very, very important indeed. So,
indeed, as mentioned earlier, you too can become involved in the preservation of Barbados's natural and built heritage by donating in any way you can to the Barbados National Trust. This has been Monuments, where we reflected on the importance of the Morgan Lewis Windmill. Thanks for your time. I'm Rashid Best.